The story begins with Kim Yoonji, a 26-year-old woman whose unusual job is working as a rented girlfriend. Through her work, she's learned a lot about why men hire temporary romantic partners, including the pressure to appear with a significant other at family gatherings and the desire to show off social status. On her current date, she's with a guy named Dushik, playing the role of his girlfriend while his skeptical friends watch. Nervous, Yoonji tries to convince them they've been dating for 100 days, but Dushik leans in and tells her to be more convincing, or else. To make his point, he breaks a bottle, hinting at consequences if she doesn't play along. Feeling the pressure, Yoonji responds with some PDA, awkwardly licking his face. Late that night, after Dushik's friends leave, he's furious with Yoonji, feeling she didn't do enough to convince them of their relationship. Reminding her he paid for her time, he implies that he expected more from her. Justifying his anger, he claims he deserves to get his money's worth and even mocks her, poking her head and calling her no better than a street gangster or a prostitute. Then, he tosses some money at her as payment for her efforts, telling her to leave. Yoonji gathers the cash, counts it, and feels a slight sense of accomplishment for earning it with minimal effort. She holds on to the idea that her appearance, her blue eyes and fair skin, is her best asset, comforting herself by focusing on her looks since she feels she lacks anything else of real value. The thought of using her earnings to buy fish-shaped pastries brings her a small bit of solace, helping her cope with how her life has turned out. At home, she considers her age of limbo, feeling caught between being young and getting older. She announces her return to an empty apartment, then showers and heads to bed. Scrolling through her phone, she looks at photos of Sigreal Apartments, Korea's most luxurious complex, and dreams of living there someday. She wonders if she'll get there by marrying into wealth or saving up on her own, but either way, it's her goal. Browsing social media, she feels down seeing her friends' successes and her old crush's achievements, feeding her sense of inferiority. But to stay positive, she reminds herself of her hard work and savings and enjoys the meals she shares with clients, hoping these efforts will eventually lead her to her dream life at Sigreal. A notification pings on her phone from a new client, Moon Sung-hyun. She's pleased to see he's attractive, but recalling past experiences, she knows looks can come with strange personalities. She remembers an uncomfortable incident with a previous client and decides to chat with Sung-hyun first to ensure he's normal before committing. Their conversation goes smoothly, and they agree to move forward. A few days later, Yoonji meets Sung-hyun for their date. He's even more handsome in person and comes across as a man of few words. He reminds her of her role as his girlfriend and drives them to their destination. She notices the familiar surroundings of Sigreal Apartments and, curious, asks if they're headed to a restaurant nearby. He confirms, and she comments on the area's exclusivity, which doesn't seem to concern him, hinting at his wealth. Arriving, they head into a restaurant called Venice, and Sung-hyun is surprised when she describes the place and its location in detail. When he asks how she knows, she casually mentions her interest in Sigreal Apartments. Sung-hyun reminds her to stay in character as his girlfriend, which makes her feel slightly nervous. Inside the restaurant, they're approached by a woman who's visibly frustrated, questioning why Sung-hyun has brought a new girlfriend despite her previous request. Defending himself, Sung-hyun says he's simply following her instructions and introduces Yoonji as his new partner. The woman doubts the relationship, questioning how he found someone so quickly. To prove their love, Sung-hyun takes Yoonji's hand and declares she's now the love of his life, surprising her with his warm touch. Though she knows it's unprofessional, Yoonji finds herself feeling a small sense of fondness for him. Eventually, the woman, who turns out to be Sung-hyun's ex-girlfriend, leaves, bitterly wishing him a good life. Once she's gone, Yoonji is left speechless by everything that just unfolded. Overwhelmed, she excuses herself and heads to the restroom. As she makes her way, she takes a moment to appreciate actually being inside Sigreal Apartments. On her way, she accidentally bumps into another woman who surprisingly recognizes her as Luna from the 130th floor. Yoonji is taken aback, realizing she'd been recognized despite previously lying about only knowing Sigreal from videos. In truth, She had lived there herself just a year ago, back when she was affluent enough to afford a residence in the building. Yoonji is hit with memories of her past life of luxury in middle school, back when she lived at Seagrill Apartments. The girl, still calling her Luna, asks where she's been, and Yoonji is relieved to sense she hasn't heard any rumors about her yet. When her family faced financial trouble, they all went their separate ways. Yoonji changed her phone number, deactivated her social media, and it's now been a year since she left Seagrill Apartments, unable to return. The girl invites her to catch up over a meal, but Yoonji feels too uncomfortable and declines, hurrying away. Back at her table, she finds her client, Sung-hyun, looking deeply unhappy and on the verge of tears. Though she'd come back to let him know their time was up, seeing him like this makes it hard to leave so abruptly. She's never seen a man cry like this, so she asks if he's okay and reassures him that he'll eventually find someone better, though he remains silent. Sensing her presence may not be helping, she gives him her card and tells him to reach out if he ever needs anything. As she turns to leave, Sung-hyun grabs her hand, pleading for her to stay and offering to pay for more of her time. But she explains that she has another client lined up, so his offer won't work. Hearing this, he tells her he's not asking her to leave the building because he lives in Seagrill Apartments, on the 130th floor, her old apartment. Surprised and thinking it feels like fate, Yoonji agrees to stay, and they head up to his apartment together. When they arrive, he kindly offers her a drink, though Yoonji seems distracted by memories of her time here. She notices that the place hasn't changed since she moved out a year ago, even the furniture remains untouched. As she sips her drink, her gaze lands on a painting she'd made for her mother. Nearby, she spots an old stain on the carpet from when she once spilled a drink for her mother, a bittersweet reminder of her past. Sung-hyun apologizes for bringing her here so unexpectedly and assures her that this isn't his usual behavior. After a few rounds of wine, the mood between them shifts, and they end up sharing a few kisses. Realizing the situation is becoming quite intimate, he excuses himself to freshen up. Left alone, Yoonji reflects on the strange feeling of being back in her old apartment, reconnecting with the memories and the atmosphere she once knew so well. While Sung-hyun is in the shower, Yoonji begins to examine her surroundings and spots a set of knives. Almost on impulse, she picks one up and contemplates the drastic notion of harming him to reclaim her old home. But reality quickly sets in, and she realizes she could never go through with something so extreme. The thought alone unsettles her, making her question the state of her mental health. This prompts her to recall that she has a psychiatric appointment scheduled for the next day. When Sung-hyun returns from the bathroom, now fully dressed, Yoonji notices his shift in demeanor, as if he's suddenly more reserved. She suggests they continue their evening in the bedroom, but he hesitates, expressing doubt about continuing any further. Persistent, she urges him to relax and remove his pants, but his initial enthusiasm has noticeably faded. Instead, he reassures her that he has her contact information and promises to reach out later. Taking the hint, Yoonji decides to leave. Back at home, she takes her prescribed medication, feeling more stable as it begins to take effect. She reflects on the strange reality of someone else now living in the place she once called home, a person who hasn't changed a single thing about it, not even the furniture. The situation baffles her, leaving her tempted to reach out to her mother for insight. She becomes fixated on the idea of turning Sung-hyun into her boyfriend, convinced that this might be her ticket back to the apartment she so deeply misses. The following day, Yoonji heads to her psychiatrist, a routine she's kept up for the past year to manage her depression and other struggles. During the session, her psychiatrist asks about her week, and Yoonji opens up about the troubling thought she'd had, an impulse to use a knife to solve her problems. She admits that her thoughts have been growing darker and more extreme. She also shares the surprising news that one of her clients now lives in her former home. This discovery has stirred intense feelings, including fleeting thoughts of harming him to regain the property. Curious, the psychiatrist probes into whether her desire to hurt him stems from her strong attachment to her old home. Yoonji acknowledges this connection, even explaining her plan to make Sung-hyun her boyfriend in hopes of reclaiming her past life. Concerned, her psychiatrist gently points out that her fixation on this idea might be driving her toward risky behavior, urging her to avoid clinging too tightly to one path forward. Yoonji feels the need to clarify her intentions to the doctor, insisting that she's not fixated on any one plan for getting back her home and that there are other options, like working harder and increasing her income. Sometimes, she struggles to fully understand his words, but her respect and fondness for him motivate her to make the effort. After leaving his office, she decides to call her mother to ask about their former home in Seagrill Apartments. She specifically wants to know if all their possessions, marked with seizure stickers, were taken along with the apartment. Her mother confirms that the new tenant took everything, as they were valuable items in good condition. Curious about who now occupies her old home, Yoonji asks her mother if she knows anything about them. But her mother is in the dark, as the details around the seizure kept them out of the loop. Yoonji explains she was just wondering, then ends the call. Moments later, she recalls that Sunghyun hasn't called her yet. Frustrated, she realizes she missed an opportunity by not getting his contact information or making more of an effort to extend their time together. Then, her phone beeps with a new client notification. To her surprise, it's her psychiatrist, Yoo Ha-sung, who's requesting her services and even proposing they meet the next day. Yoonji is intrigued by this unexpected development and wonders what it could mean for their relationship if he becomes a client. Suddenly, an unfamiliar number calls her. It's Sunghyun, asking her to meet him at Seagrill Apartments at 6 o'clock the next day. Coincidentally, that's the exact time her doctor had requested. Torn between the two appointments, she tentatively suggests a different time to Sunghyun, but he insists on 6 o'clock, giving her no room to negotiate. Feeling the weight of his insistence, she decides to text him, explaining her prior commitment. But Sunghyun stands firm, reiterating the importance of the meeting and even offering her extra money as an incentive. His persistence takes her by surprise, and she begins to wonder if he thinks she's purely motivated by money. Unsure, she stalls for time, saying she needs to think it over. Amid these conflicting thoughts, Yoonji's emotions become even more complicated. She recalls a pivotal moment in her past when she saved her mother from a suicide attempt brought on by financial hardship. Since then, her mother's well-being has been a constant worry. Lost in her memories, she receives another message from Sunghyun, in which he reiterates his eagerness to meet her the next day. As Yoonji rides up to meet Sunghyun, she feels both anticipation and nerves, reminding herself of the real reason she's here, to try and secure a future back in the home she once shared with her mother. With this strategy in mind, she brings along the necessary items, prepared for whatever might arise. She recalls advice from a friend, warning her about the emotional entanglements that can come with physical closeness. The last thing she needs is to become swept up by feelings she doesn't want, so she reminds herself to stay focused on her goal, not to let love blind her. When Sunghyun sends the address, she's intrigued to see it's his home address. Yoonji imagines him setting a romantic scene, envisioning him perhaps in a robe with a small bar set up to create the right atmosphere. However, once she arrives on the 130th floor, she's surprised to find him dressed in a sleek suit, his hair meticulously styled. It's a professional look that doesn't match her earlier expectations. Sunghyun directs her to change into a high-end outfit he's provided. The expense of these clothes makes her wonder just how much he's invested in today's arrangement. In the middle of all this, Sunghyun compliments her eyes but remarks that they might be contacts. Yoonji defends herself, assuring him her blue eyes are natural, a distinctive feature she's proud of. Still unconvinced, he arranges for black contact lenses, explaining his uncle might misinterpret her eye color as an affectation. Though she's irritated, she reluctantly puts in the lenses, feeling the discomfort almost immediately. As they prepare to leave, Sunghyun discloses his plan, to introduce her as his fiancée to his uncle. Yoonji's initial excitement fades as she realizes that this isn't a romantic encounter at all, but another role for her to play. She masks her disappointment, refocusing her attention on the job at hand. When they arrive at Centrio, a luxurious restaurant with an exclusive VIP room on the 89th floor, Yoonji is captivated by the ambience and views. As the door to the VIP room opens, Sunghyun's uncle enters, greeting them both warmly. They exchange pleasantries and settle into their seats. Almost immediately, the uncle begins discussing Sunghyun's engagement and future plans, offering both congratulations and veiled criticisms. Yoonji notes that the uncle's words carry a subtle edge, as though he's trying to size them up from the very start. The quick turn to business catches her off guard, as she had expected at least a casual beginning. Sunghyun maintains a respectful tone, addressing his uncle's concerns. He explains that he understands the importance of rebuilding trust and is determined to show he can live up to the family's expectations. As Sunghyun's uncle leaves, the brief encounter leaves an unusual tension between Yoonji and Sunghyun. She can tell that the meeting didn't go as well as he'd hoped. Back on the 130th floor, Sunghyun barely acknowledges her as he pours himself a drink, the frustration evident in his posture. His movements are hurried yet deliberate, loosening his tie and running his hands through his hair in exasperation. Yoonji watches, understanding that he's grappling with something beneath the surface. Though she's only beginning to piece together the complexities of his family dynamics, she senses that there's more weight to this engagement than he's revealed. Seeing his mood, Yoonji offers to change out of the elegant attire he'd chosen for her, feeling a bit out of place in the luxurious clothing. But Sunghyun asks her to stay. For the first time, his tone holds a vulnerability she hasn't seen before, and it draws her in. She decides to remain by his side, believing that this might be her chance to connect with him on a deeper level. They settle in with their drinks, and the tension between them slowly shifts from frustration to something warmer. As the evening wears on, the effects of the alcohol start to ease away Sunghyun's guarded demeanor. Their conversation flows more easily, and soon they're sharing light touches that linger a bit longer than necessary. Before they realize it, the barriers between them fall away, replaced by a mutual desire to lose themselves in the closeness of each other. As their kisses grow more fervent, they find themselves shedding layers of clothing, letting go of the facades they've both been hiding behind. In the dim light, Sunghyun pauses, looking at her with an intensity that makes her breath catch. He gently traces her skin, his touch igniting sensations that leave her breathless. She responds to him, unable to suppress the soft sounds that escape her lips. As the moment builds, he reaches for her hand, his gaze searching hers with a question left unspoken. Yoonji's evening with Sunghyun leaves her in a state of emotional confusion. The way he pulled back after initiating such a charged moment stings, especially since she had gone out of her way to be prepared. The tenderness he showed her at first seemed genuine, but then he withdrew, leaving her feeling uncertain and rejected. As she rides home in the taxi he'd arranged, Yoonji can't stop replaying the moment over and over, trying to figure out what went wrong. The idea that Sunghyun might dislike her or that she somehow repelled him is disheartening. Her insecurities begin to surface, and the tears she holds back until she's safely home finally start to fall. Alone in her apartment, Yoonji wrestles with conflicting thoughts. She wonders if it's her mental health, the struggles with manic depression she's been working hard to manage, that's intensifying these feelings of loneliness and rejection. On a rational level, she knows that these thoughts aren't necessarily grounded in reality, but emotionally, she feels the sting of Sunghyun's unexpected retreat deeply. The memory of her once lavish life feels both comforting and painful. Back then, she had control, power, and the freedom to live as she pleased. Now, she's facing the harsh reality that, without money, her options seem narrower, and her self-worth feels tied to the superficial, the only asset she's certain she has left. In a moment of impulsive longing, Yoonji reaches out to Taehoon, her ex. They share a complicated past, but right now, she's willing to set aside the reasons they split. Taehoon responds quickly, his own loneliness driving him to accept her invitation. After the tense conversation with Taehoon, Yoonji feels an emptiness settle over her. His callous dismissal, laced with the reminder of her past reluctance and his disregard for her feelings, only deepens her sense of isolation. The way he scoffed at her, suggesting she should just go back to the clinic for more treatment, cuts through her like a dull blade. As the line disconnects, she's left staring at her phone, grappling with a mix of anger, sadness, and, above all, regret. There's a bitter irony in how things have turned out. Once, she was the one pulling away from Taehoon, rejecting his advances, and now, she's mourning Sunghyun's own emotional distance. Her mind flickers to her psychiatrist. She's leaned on him for so long, confiding in him as she tries to find stability amidst her mental health struggles. She can't help but acknowledge that the doctor sees her as just another patient, another file in his caseload. But there's a part of her that wishes it was different, that maybe he could somehow be the person to fill this gnawing void, even if it's only in her mind. It's then that memories flood back, of a time a year ago when she felt lost enough to listen to strangers preaching in the street, promising peace through their faith. She recalls the overwhelming thoughts that crowded her mind during those days, dark, desperate thoughts urging her toward an end she wasn't sure she wanted. The memory stirs something raw in her, a recognition of how fragile she has felt before, and perhaps still does. The sadness she feels now over Sunghyun's rejection almost feels like it taps into that same emptiness, a hollowness that sometimes consumes her when she's alone. In her next appointment with her psychiatrist, Yoonji finally brings her darkest feelings into the light. She tells him, candidly, that she feels as though her life might end this week. She repeats it, almost to make sure he understands this isn't an exaggeration or a fleeting worry, she truly means it. Her voice trembles as she speaks, insisting that these aren't the usual words she says when she's low. This is different, something much heavier and darker. The doctor's assurance provides Yoonji a sense of stability she hasn't felt in a while. He inquires about her medication adherence, a gentle reminder of his role in her life as both a caregiver and a guiding presence. She's grateful for him, for the calm certainty he brings to their sessions and the safe space he offers her to release the emotions she can't always contain. Watching him, she finds herself curious about the rapid movement of his pen and wonders what he's noting down. It's not just his professional demeanor that draws her in, there's something in his calm gestures and the attentive way he listens that makes her feel something more. When he suggests increasing her medication dosage, Yoonji is hesitant. Her internal voice insists that no pill can truly touch the weight of her struggles. Yet, despite her reluctance, she notices that he never wavers in his encouragement. Over time, Yoonji feels herself beginning to look forward to their sessions. Her feelings toward him deepen subtly and quietly. It's something she hasn't allowed herself to truly consider until now. She admires him, but she's wary of crossing a line in her own heart, reminding herself that he's her doctor, and she's his patient. Yet, the thought lingers, leaving her feeling vulnerable and conflicted. Back home, Yoonji finds herself lingering over her phone, her thoughts circling back to Sunghyun. On impulse, she calls him, simply to let him know she's safely home. To her surprise, he answers, and a small part of her heart lifts. She voices her concern that they might not see each other again. Sunghyun reassures her that this won't be the end. He admits he has something he's been holding back, something significant that he's struggled to share with anyone else. Hesitantly, he confesses that he committed a crime in his past, a revelation that he knows may alter the way she views him. He asks if she would still be willing to hear him out despite what he's told her, his voice tinged with uncertainty and the weight of his hidden guilt. When Yoonji arrives, she finds Sunghyun visibly shaken. His face is pale, his hands clammy, and as she takes them in hers, she feels the tremble coursing through him. They step inside, the weight of his confession hanging between them. Sunghyun seems conflicted, glancing at her with a mixture of shame and vulnerability, worried that she'll view him as selfish or foolish for bringing her into his troubles. But Yoonji's heart only swells with empathy. She reassures him, expressing her gratitude that he's finally opening up. With a heavy sigh, he admits that it took him countless attempts and a surge of courage to finally tell her his darkest truth. As he reveals his painful story, Yoonji listens in stunned silence. His father, a man with a dangerous drinking problem, had come at his mother with a knife in a drunken rage. Driven by a desperate need to protect her, Sunghyun intervened, his actions fueled by fear and love. The struggle ended with his father fatally wounded, and though it was self-defense, the law saw it as manslaughter. He served a prison sentence, cut short by parole, and still bears the reminder in the form of an ankle monitor. Yoonji's heart aches as she takes in his words, especially as he explains that his mother didn't survive. This tragic revelation, painful as it is, draws her closer to him. Despite her own inner voice warning her to tread carefully, she offers to stay with him tonight. As they find comfort in each other's arms, the tension between them gives way to intimacy, though Sung-hyun remains cautious, pausing to ask if she's comfortable with each step. Yoonji's mind races with conflicted thoughts, but in the end, she lets herself be swept up in the moment. Their connection deepens, and at one point, Yoonji's vulnerability leads her to reveal her real name, a quiet testament to the trust that's building between them. Sung-hyun suggests they shift positions, his request sending a shiver down her spine. After they finish, Sung-hyun soon drifts off to sleep, but Yoonji remains wide awake, her mind replaying the events that just unfolded. She wonders if this night signifies the start of a real relationship between them, if this is the moment they move from fleeting encounters into something more lasting. Just as she's deep in thought, Sung-hyun stirs, turning toward her. He notices she's still awake and, with a soft smile, pulls her close, asking why she hasn't joined him in sleep. His lips find hers again, his touch reigniting the lingering sparks between them. As things start to heat up, Sung-hyun half jokes, half pleads with her to stop teasing him, admitting that her closeness is stirring him up all over again. They're both inclined to continue, but Yoonji soon realizes they're out of condoms. She suggests they continue regardless, but Sung-hyun gently declines, his voice filled with concern. He insists that they shouldn't take any risks and suggests they simply get some rest instead. Their quiet moment is interrupted when Sung-hyun's phone vibrates, signaling a call from his uncle. He answers, his tone cautious as he asks why his uncle would be calling so late. His uncle's voice has an edge, making a remark about Sung-hyun's activities despite his electronic ankle monitor. The uncle's tone grows sharper as he brings up Sung-hyun's recent meeting with a lawyer. Though Sung-hyun tries to brush it off as a personal consultation, his uncle's frustration is clear. The conversation takes an unsettling turn as his uncle warns that if Sung-hyun continues this behavior, he wants him to stop seeing Yoonji. Surprised, Sung-hyun presses for a reason, but his uncle merely mutters something about having a bad feeling about her. There's more to explore in Yoonji's tangled relationships, but this chapter ends here, for now. Want us to continue? Share your thoughts in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next one.